He couldn't understand a word I said. Like, I'm like, how you doing? He like, somebody come save me.
You could do on her birthday is at least release some balloons and eat cake. At least throw her a birthday party, especially since it's been a year since she's been gone.
Long live Lashonda!
The man who claimed responsibility for the shooting death of a 17-year-old in Dayton is now backing out of his plea deal.
Goodwin's victim and ex-girlfriend posted his social media several times before her death, sharing that she was afraid of her abuser, Goodwin.
In 2018, a 17-year-old girl wrote a letter to the judge asking for her abusive boyfriend to be released from jail after he was arrested for harassing her. Not long after he was set free, that same girl was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound to the head. Shortly after arriving, Lashonda Childs was pronounced dead, killed by the very person she had pleaded for. This is the heartbreaking story of Lashonda Childs, a story filled with warning signs that were sadly missed. It's a story that might help someone else recognize the danger before it's too late. 17-year-old Lashonda Sharice Childs was born to Nina and Joseph Childs on October 5, 2000, in Dayton, Ohio. She grew up alongside her 3 siblings. From an early age, she showed a strong sense of independence, always wanting to do things herself. Lashonda had a natural drive for business and always wanted to provide for herself. She was hardworking, vibrant, and ambitious. She was passionate about beauty and had a deep love for makeup. So at just 17 years old, she turned her passion into a reality by starting her own beauty business called the Beauty Blender LLC, where she provided aesthetic services like waxing eyebrows, styling hair, applying makeup, and doing nails. Friends and family described Lashonda as fun-loving, with a personality that naturally drew people to her.
Hey, what's up?
Her vibrant energy was evident in her social media presence.
He couldn't understand a word I said. Like, I'm like, how you doing? He like,
where she frequently shared videos showcasing her business, dancing, and giving glimpses into her daily life. She also posted makeup trends and offered fashion tips, further engaging her audience. Although Lashonda started running her business, it was going smoothly, but she also had a dream of becoming a cosmetologist. Lashonda had an undeniable enthusiasm for life. Those close to her fondly remembered how she was never afraid to express her thoughts and opinions, always speaking her mind with confidence. That same irresistible charm would lead her to start dating a man who would set off a chain of events that no one could have imagined. Lashonda started chatting with a young man, 28-year-old Trendell Lamont Goodwin, on social media. Trendell was a charming young man who lived with his mother and sister in Dayton, Ohio. Their conversation started casually, filled with lighthearted banter and discussions about their favorite music, fashion trends, and future aspirations. They bonded over shared interests, with Lashonda talking about her growing beauty business and Trendell expressing his own ambitions. With time, Lashonda found herself drawn to Trendell in ways she hadn't anticipated. As they continued to chat, their connection deepened. They discussed personal goals, family life, and even their thoughts on relationships. Trendell seemed charming and attentive, always complimenting Lashonda and showing interest in her work. She enjoyed the attention and appreciated having someone to talk to who seemed to understand and support her drive.
somebody come save me.
Then, in September of 2017, Lashonda and Trendell officially started dating. But just when it seemed like her life was picture perfect, nothing could have prepared her for what was to come. From the moment Lashonda and Trendell started dating, their relationship was far from perfect. What started as an exciting connection quickly turned into a cycle of constant arguments and misunderstandings. His possessiveness and sudden mood swings were not just random bursts of emotion, but signs of something far more troubling. While Lashonda tried to make sense of their constant fights, she had no idea that the man she was falling for wasn't who he claimed to be. He was hiding a secret from her. Underneath Trendell's charm was a dark side that Lashonda hadn't seen yet. Trendell had a history of domestic violence with his previous relationships. That wasn't his only lie. When they first started talking, he had told Lashonda he was only 20 years old, but the truth was, he was actually 28. When Trendell realized Lashonda had caught him in his age lie, he began showing some very disturbing behavior. Trendell had allegedly been booked into the Montgomery County Jail more than 10 times for various crimes, beginning in 2011. Police reports revealed a troubling history of violence he had, not just against his ex-girlfriends, but also against his own mother and sister. It didn't take long for Lashonda to realize she had made a mistake by getting involved with him. The man she thought she knew was far more dangerous than she had ever imagined.
News Center 7 got hold of court documents in this case that showed Childs and her family went to the police for help about Goodwin multiple times.
Trendell would often forcefully take Lashonda's phone from her. He would make it a duty to harass her family. Lashonda's mom would later express that Trendell would allegedly call their phone over 70 times a day. This did not only aggravate the family, but it also scared them. But Lashonda seemed to not really care. She felt this was Trendell's way of showing he loved her. So the two continued their relationship even after her family had warned her against Trendell. But nothing could prepare Lashonda for what was to come. On Christmas Eve of 2017, Trendell had allegedly thrown a drink at Lashonda in front of her family members. He had then tried to drag her out of a car by her feet after suspecting she was texting another man. Just 2 months prior, Trendell had also suspected Lashonda of texting another man, and he had thrown her phone against a wall, and he had tossed her purse into a sewer. This was just one of the many abusive incidents she endured. On January 31st, 2018, Trendell again had allegedly slapped Lashonda in the face after she told him she was going out with a friend. The argument escalated, and he threatened to knock her out before forcing her out of his home with no clothes. Desperate for help, Lashonda tried to contact the neighbors. However, when she returned to collect her clothes and shoes, Trendell dragged her inside and refused to let her leave. Trendell's neighbors, realizing that Lashonda was being held against her will, decided to call the police. When officers arrived at the scene, they could hear Lashonda shouting from inside the apartment, pleading that Trendell wouldn't leave her alone. The police had to make a decision quickly. They decided to break down the door and gain access to the apartment and arrest Trendell. But no one could have predicted the devastating events that were about to unfold. On February 19, 2018, Trendell allegedly hit Lashonda in the face and bit her shoulder during an argument over text messages involving another woman. Lashonda immediately called the police, and Trendell was arrested once again. The officer who arrested Trendell wrote on his incident report that Lashonda had a fresh bite mark on her left shoulder. The left side of her face was swollen where she claimed Goodwin hit her. He also added that Lashonda had abrasions on the right side of her neck and Trendell's nose was bleeding. Despite all these documented incidents of abuse, what happened next was the most shocking twist of all. Trendell was sentenced to 180 days in prison for misdemeanor assault, but shockingly, Lashonda wrote a letter to the judge who presided over his case in January, pleading for him to be released.
Relationship between the two. Mike?
Well, James, we tracked down a letter that Lashonda Childs once wrote to a municipal court judge in which she asked the judge not to keep Goodwin behind bars even after he'd been convicted of an assault involving her. Now, that may be surprising to some, but not necessarily to domestic abuse counselors. However, this time it is likely that Goodwin will stay behind bars here at the jail at least until his trial.
First case, Trendell Goodwin, case number 28.
This is the first glimpse of Trendell Goodwin since police arrested him Tuesday night, accusing him of murdering 17-year-old Lashonda Childs. His lawyer asked the judge to keep the bond low, saying he's a lifelong resident of Dayton. The judge didn't do that.
In the letter, she described Trendell as a kind-hearted, family-oriented man, saying, "He is really not a bad guy. We went through a rough patch in life together, which resulted in a huge mess. I am willing and ready to patch our relationship and friendship back up. I could honestly say I love and miss him dearly. I wouldn't want to see him in jail. It's not for him. A genuinely kind-hearted, family-oriented man." While those words showed the depth of her hope that he would get better, but tragically, that hope would soon be shattered. Of the 180 days Trendell was meant to serve, he only served 19 days before being released. Although Lashonda had pleaded with the judge to grant Trendell his release, hoping there was still a chance for him to change, her hopes were brutally dashed. Just a few days after his release, while still on probation for an earlier assault, Trendell's behavior escalated to a horrifying new level. In September, he reportedly grabbed Lashonda's hair and her wig, and in a shocking act of wickedness, he set the wig on fire before throwing it back at her, causing her severe burns on her body and making her drop her phone in pain. Trindell then snatched her phone and ran away. Lashonda then went on Facebook to share her experience, saying, "Y'all, Trenny Mac stole my phone and set me on fire. So if you'll be getting random inboxes or seeing dumb posts, report it, and if you'll see that, call the police. I'm sick of this." He's on some "if I can't have her, nobody can" weird. But despite this, Trindell's harassment continued. In September, Trindell would go to Lashonda's family home and he fired multiple shots at the house. Fearing for their safety, her family immediately reported the incident to the police. This made his probation to be extended by another year, and he was ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from Lashonda, but even that wasn't enough to stop him. On September 21, Lashonda made a disturbing post on Facebook sharing all of the horrific things that Trindell had ever done to her. She said, "All jokes aside though, everybody wanted crazy until he got you hiding and dodging bullets. If you see the signs, don't ignore it. Y'all, domestic violence is real, not just in movies. This guy done broke several phones, busted windows out, followed me from my house to wherever, bit me several times, threw me into walls, made me walk places with a gun to my back, put all my stuff in a sewer, held me hostage in the house, and didn't let me leave. Sat and waited at abandoned houses and watched me. Pulled my whole sew and off, leaving bald spots and all that. Now, he done set my hair on fire and shot my house up. That ain't even half the stuff he's done. But I'm telling you all that ain't where it's at. If y'all see the signs, don't ignore it. I should have left that a long time ago. Now, I ain't even safe in my own house." Trindell responded with terrifying comments. Trindell responded to the post by saying, "If y'all really believe this, y'all sick. This, the 12th or 13th time, she said I did something but still coming back. Stop it." When someone commented by saying he should let her breathe, he disturbingly replied, "I'ma let her breathe today. She better come home tomorrow though. I got a big day planned and some good news." But the most alarming part of the conversation came when a concerned friend suggested Lashonda block him, pointing out that he had too much access to her life. Lashonda replied to her by saying, "Blocking doesn't help. He stole my phone. He can get access to all my stuff." Another friend then begged her to leave town before it was too late, warning, "Before you end up dead somewhere." Lashonda responded saying, "I am." But no one could have predicted the devastating events that were about to unfold. The next day, on September 22nd, a woman who had commented on Lashonda's post urging Trindell to get help went to the police to report that he had threatened to kill her. His rage wasn't just directed at Lashonda. It was now going after anyone who dared to call him out. But while it seemed Trindell's focus was shifted, something heartbreaking would happen. At around 8 p.m. on October 2nd, 2018, less than 2 weeks after Lashonda made the disturbing Facebook post, she made a frantic 911 call, unaware of what was about to happen to her. A few minutes after making the 911 call, Lashonda was rushed to the emergency room at Grandview Medical Center after being shot in the head. Immediately, doctors rushed to attend to her, trying to save her life. When police arrived at the address Lashonda had given, they discovered she had already been rushed to the hospital. Investigators immediately headed to Grandview Medical Center, where they encountered a man who claimed to be Lashonda's new boyfriend and a witness to the incident. He shared that they were sitting in a parked car when Trindell had walked up to them with a gun and pointed it at his head. That was when Lashonda called 911, but when she tried to drive away, Trindell fired at them, hitting Lashonda in the head. He then immediately rushed her to the hospital, but the worst was yet to happen. The following day, on October 3rd, just before 9 a.m., after Lashonda was rushed to the hospital, doctors did everything they could to save her, but sadly, she died just 2 days before her 18th birthday. When Lashonda's family and friends heard about her tragic death, they were devastated, grief-stricken, and overwhelmed with sorrow. They struggled to understand why Trindell hadn't been stopped before things escalated to this horrifying point. Lashonda had done everything she could. She had reported the abuse to the police, left him, and even went ahead to obtain a restraining order. Yet her family was left with endless questions.
They never fully closed the wound. We still have a lot of information that we don't know what happened.
Before her death, Lashonda posted to social media about how scared she was of Goodwin, her ex-boyfriend. She even had a restraining order against him, but it didn't save her life.
Why was Trendell still free to harass and eventually kill her? Why wasn't he arrested the first time he violated his probation? How many warnings were needed before an action would be taken? As soon as the police confirmed that Trendell was responsible for the crime, they wasted no time tracking him down. He was immediately arrested and charged with the murder of 17-year-old Lashonda Childs. Trendell's father, who doesn't want to be named, described Lashonda's murder as a tragedy for both families. He extended his condolences to her loved ones, saying, "It's too late to say I wish things could have been different." However, he also defended his son, insisting there are two sides to every story, and claiming that Lashonda's boyfriend had pulled a gun on Trendell. Despite his defense, he acknowledged that if Trendell was proven guilty, he deserved to be punished. On October 5, 2018, Trendell appeared in court, where a judge set his bail at $1 million and his trial was scheduled to begin on October 16, 2019. However, just when it seemed that the case was proceeding as expected, the most shocking twist unfolded. Trendell decided to take a plea deal. According to the agreement, he pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including murder with a firearm specification, which adds additional time to his sentence, discharge of a firearm on or near a prohibited premise, and felonious assault with a deadly weapon. The plea document stipulated a sentence of 18 years to life in prison, although the judge still needed to decide whether to accept the deal. Nothing could prepare the court for what lay ahead. Just a few weeks later, Trendell reportedly tried to take back his plea deal, claiming that his lawyer had misrepresented how long he would be required to remain in prison before release. He believed he could receive a lighter sentence for his crimes and even wrote to the judge asking to fire his lawyer. In his letter, he expressed that, "It all happened so fast. I felt like I got railroaded. I didn't feel right pleading guilty." The judge agreed to allow Trendell to dismiss his previous lawyer. However, after consulting with his new attorney and learning that he could face a sentence of 40 years to life in prison, Trendell ultimately decided to stick with the plea deal. On the day of the sentencing hearing, Lashonda's family filled the courtroom, their hearts heavy with grief and a desperate hope for justice. When the verdict was finally read, Trendell Lamont Goodwin was sentenced to 18 years to life in prison for the murder of Lashonda Sharice Childs. His conviction included charges of murder, felonious assault, and discharging a firearm on or near a prohibited premise. Although the family was relieved that Lashonda's killer would spend many years in prison, they still believed he deserved a sentence of life without parole.
Child's family says they'll have to carry on as best they can, but they'll never forget Lashonda.
Just trying to move on, live a normal life, We still think about it all the time.
They expressed that while they would do their best to carry on, they would never forget Lashonda or the pain of her loss. On October 13, 2018, a vigil for Lashonda Childs was held as family and friends gathered to honor her memory. Her funeral service followed at the Kettering Chapel in Moraine, Ohio, where loved ones said their final goodbyes. Then, on what would have been her 19th birthday, another vigil was held in her honor, a heartfelt celebration of the vibrant girl who was taken far too soon. The tragic death of 17-year-old Lashonda Childs is a reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence. Despite her efforts to seek help and her warnings about the dangers she faced, Lashonda's life was cut short by the very person she once trusted and loved. Let me know what you think in the comments section below.